We are here today. We are here today thanks to a grant funded by the Community Foundation of Boulder, and we want to say a big thank you, and we are ready to get started. You're here for Renters Get Prepared tips to help you get insured, and we will probably be done in just about an hour, and so you can get to your dinner and your evening. And we will also be taking questions on the Q&A in your toolbar on Zoom. And we will do our best to answer any questions that come in, either during the presentation or after. So thank you again, and we'll get started. Okay, a little bit about United Policyholders. Again, my name is Carrie Waite, and I'm the Colorado coordinator. I started working with UP following a big wildfire in my neighborhood 9 years ago. UP was such a big help to us, and I wanted to pay it forward. And that's how I came to be your Colorado coordinator, and I'm still here. And now, what we do all over the country in 50 states is we're a voice and an information resource for insurance consumers. UP has been in existence for over 30 years. We just celebrated our anniversary. We are insurance subject matter expertise for buying, which is what we're talking about today. Claims when you have something happen and need to use your insurance, and legal. We're supported by donors, volunteers, and grants like the grant from the Community Foundation of Boulder today. We also speak up in the media, and we have a link here that you can see if you want to see what's been happening with that. We speak also in courts, legislators, and public policy forums, and one of our programs, which we're going to talk about today, is the Advocacy in Action, where we do that. And we made a difference in Colorado in 2013. We spoke up and participated in insurance reform in Colorado, which changed for the better a number of our regulations in Colorado to make them more consumer friendly. We still have lots of work to do, and we'll be speaking up again this year in an effort to get some more legislative changes. We also do a roadmap to recovery program. In this program, we provide information to people who have experienced a disaster, catastrophic loss, such as a tornado, a hurricane, or wildfire. We're currently conducting 3 roadmap to recovery programs in Colorado in the 3 counties that had losses in 2020. And fortunately, we haven't had to start any new programs in 2021 for wildfire. But between wildfire, hail, and flooding, Colorado is increasingly becoming a state where we need to really focus on preparedness, so the road to recovery will be easier. And that's what we're doing today, is our Roadmap to Preparedness program, helping people and businesses prepare and shop wisely for insurance. So we're going to dig into it a little bit now. First, I'll show you a couple of pictures. This is a picture on top of Governor Hickenlooper at the time signing the 2013 legislative reform bill. And here is our little staff and volunteers, including myself and our executive director. We were able to be there for the signing. So that was a good moment, and we hope to do that again in the coming year. This is me. I've already told you about who I am. And now we're going to dig in. And we call our preparedness work often tips from the trenches, because the information we share with you, we have learned the hard way through helping people in disaster situations in their effort to be resilient and to recover from the disasters. Insurance money is the #1 source of recovery money that helps people after a disaster. Government assistance is important, especially for infrastructure, for things like roads and utilities. But assistance to individuals is very limited. It's based on need, and it only applies when there is a declared disaster. So in other words, the government has to declare a large enough disaster for FEMA to come in and give individual assistance. The maximum grant thus far has been limited to $36,000. And that is after, with a total loss of a home or even a major flood or something like that, a very limited amount of money, obviously, given what things cost along the Front Range and in the mountains in Colorado now. Charitable aid comes in, and it's also extremely important, but it usually only covers basic or emergency needs. So things like immediate food or short-term shelter. But only insurance dollars usually come into play in the big items of recovery, like automobiles and homes and all of your personal belongings. So we'll dig into the basic rental insurance basics. If you have a renter's insurance policy, or we are able to convince you to consider getting a rental insurance policy, that policy will have your name and address on it, whether you're in a mobile home, a large house, a condominium, an apartment. If you are paying rent to the owner, then you, or even sharing a home with a number of people, you are a renter and you have the ability to seek a renter's insurance policy. That policy would have your name and address on it again. You would pay for it, and any claim dollars that came from a claim from that policy would go to you and be in your name. It covers the cost, usually to clean or replace your belongings. In other words, your belongings would be what you would take with you if you moved. And in a renter's policy, you don't own the building itself, but rather the contents. So it is the contents or personal property that you would insure. It will cover the cost to replace those things or to repair or clean them up to the limit of the policy that you purchase. And that dollar amount will be on your policy paperwork. It also may cover temporary rent until you can rent or you can re-enter or get a new space to live. Usually though, in rental policies, that's limited to 2 weeks of temporary living costs or a fixed dollar amount and no more than 2 weeks in Colorado. So it's really just a chance to get a deep breath and assess your situation and maybe get into a hotel or a temporary living space while you figure out what the next steps are. Your landlord would also likely, and you should ask and be sure they do, have an insurance policy. That policy would be in the landlord's name. The landlord would pay for it, and all claim dollars in that for those payments would go to the landlord. So there's a wall or a distinction, and it literally is the wall. All of the contents inside that belong to you would be covered by your policy. The structure itself and any of the belongings of the landlord would be covered by their insurance policy. And that should include the cost to repair or rebuild the building itself and the attached finishes. And that's important for you to know that your landlord has that policy in place so that they can repair, have the funds to repair, and perhaps you could move back in. Now, renter's insurance. Once again, let's go over why to pay for renter's insurance. Often people who rent really don't think about it in terms of I should have rental insurance. But it's quite a bargain. It's usually less than $10 a month. And it can really provide some security and protection for you. Should you need to replace all of your belongings, if there's an apartment fire or natural disaster damages or destroys the rental space you live in and your things, what happens next? Well, if you have rental insurance, it gives you time and help to figure out those next steps. You may have a place to live for 2 weeks paid for, and some funds to repurchase belongings that you desperately need just to live your everyday life, much less to replace all the things you've accumulated and the valuable things that you care about. Most renters insurance cover fire, theft, and many other causes of loss that are called perils. Your policy will state what perils are covered and what perils are excluded. It's also often the case now, especially in apartment complexes, that your landlord would require you to have renter's insurance in order for them to allow you to lease their space. So here are some situations when rental insurance can be of help to you. If someone breaks into your home and steals your personal belongings, excuse me, those belongings would be covered up to the policy limits, and you would be able to make a claim and get reimbursed for funds to repurchase those belongings or repair them. If a fire or a storm damages your apartment, again, and you need someplace to live short term, insurance can help you then. If your personal things are damaged by a fire or a storm or another covered loss, which could be even something like a tree hitting the window and allowing rain to fall in and cause damage, or a plumbing leak above you that damaged your personal belongings as well as the building. If you are traveling with your belongings, say maybe you've parked your car at a friend's or in the neighbor's driveway, or you're at the airport parking garage, and someone breaks in and steals, say, your laptop or your clothing or other things, your personal belongings are generally covered regardless of where they are, even if you're staying with someone else or if they're in your car, if you are carrying renter's insurance. So that can be very helpful too. Another way that renter's insurance comes in is if a guest or a worker gets injured in your home, renter's insurance generally also includes some liability insurance. And I'll get into more detail on that in the coming slides. So we just talked about things that basic renter's insurance generally does cover. Some things that it does not pay for should you have damage is if you or any family member intentionally damages or destroys your home. So, you know, if somebody accidentally hits the garage door when they're backing out, that is an accident. But if someone punches a wall and puts a hole in the wall, which those of us who have raised boys know that that can happen sometimes, just even while playing, that type of thing is still considered intentional, and you would not file an insurance claim in that case. If an earthquake or mudslide damages or destroys your home, those are two types of perils or disasters that can happen that generally are not covered with standard basic renter's insurance. And a flood, or what is considered rising water that damages or destroys your home, is also not covered by basic renter's insurance. Tonight, I'm also going to go over the same sort of guidelines around flood insurance, which would be a separate policy, and earthquake insurance can also be added. If you live in an area that you feel your risk is high for earthquake. that's something that can be addressed, but the standard policies generally don't address earthquake, mudslide, or flood. That being said, I want to bring your attention to this bottom paragraph. You may, in fact, be covered if it's falling water. So instead of rising water from outside of the home, if the structure is damaged and water comes in, or if there's a mechanical failure, a plugged toilet, broken pipe inside the home that causes water damage, that type of thing may in fact be covered. There's also an endorsement that can be added to your basic insurance that is storm and sewer backup, and that can cover some other types of damage that can come if the city's sewer system or storm system were to back up into the space. But that is kind of a rare scenario from a renter's perspective. So this, excuse me, would be an example of sort of a standard renter's policy declarations page. The declarations page is usually the first page of the policy that is given to you if you buy renter's insurance. And it's the page that has the basic important information that demonstrates how many resources are available to you should you need the money and should you have a valid claim. So it will include information like the name of the insured and the mailing address, which is blacked out here, but that's really important. That should be you and your mailing address. And then the residence premises, and that would be where you live and where the insurance is based. So you would take out your rental insurance based on where you live and where your belongings normally are. The policy information would give you important things like your account number and your policy number, who your insurer is, and how you would contact them should you need a claim or to change anything in your policy. And then below that, you generally have a policy period, which states the effective date of the policy. And this is very important because if you ever need to make a claim, you want to make sure that you're looking at the correct policy date and that it's effective for when your loss occurred. And then the total premium you pay for this policy. Now, this is the annual premium reflected here for this particular policy is $151. And that would be before any discounts. And there are a number of discounts available, and I'm going to talk to that more also, but you definitely want to ask your agent about available discounts that might work for you. This particular one has a loss-free discount, which means you have not ever made a claim on this policy, and a good payer discount, which means that you've paid your bills on time. And generally you can pay a renter's policy either all at once and maybe get a slight discount, a couple percentage points for doing that, or you can have the money taken out of your account every month so that it isn't, you don't have to pay for it all at once. And then the next section is going to show you coverages and limits of liability. And this is where the meat of the policy is. You will see that your limit for personal property, which would be coverage C, and that's your stuff, on this policy is $10,300. In Colorado, these policies, generally you can do maybe $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 of contents for, you know, in the neighborhood or less than $100 a year, depending on where you live and how much coverage you choose. And then this particular policy is showing loss of use of $3,090. And that would mean that that would be the most you would have available to spend on temporary living expense if you were not able to live in your in the property you're renting. And I will explain more about that also as we go on. You know, the theory is you have to hear something 3 times before it sinks in. And we're going to hit on the key points at least a couple of times anyway tonight. And then we will make this PDF, so a printable version of the slides you're looking at available to you after the event, should you want to go over them and use the links that are shown, and transfer your notes to match up with the slides. We will also have video links of this presentation that will be available to you. So just know you have that opportunity to go over this information again in the future. The next section of the policy is liability coverage section. And there are 2 different types of liability coverage here. One is coverage E, which is personal liability. So this is for bodily damage and property damage that you might be responsible for. So if your dog were to bite someone and it destroyed their clothing and they had to go get stitches, this would be a situation where you would use your coverage E and possibly your coverage F as well for the medical payments that would be needed. And so those limits of liability change too, and depending on your circumstances in life, you may or may not want to increase or decrease those limits. And then the peril deductible. So in this policy, it's something called an all perils policy, and the deductible is $500, and it's the same for anything that might happen. If you were to do a claim for water damage to your belongings, or a claim for total fire loss, or anything like that, your deductible would be $500. What is a deductible? Well, a deductible is the amount that has to come out of your pocket before the insurer starts paying. And there are 2 different ways a policy can look that we wanted to show you, and there are many more. This is another snapshot of a different policy, which also shows the same limits, but it can just be presented in a different way. And you can see here a $500 deductible. Generally on renter's insurance or rental insurance, you'll see choices of $250, $500, maybe $1,000 deductible. And depending on what kind of resources you keep in an emergency fund or a savings account, you may want to change the deductible. The lower the deductible, the more the premiums cost. The higher deductible, the less the premiums cost. In this particular example that I'm showing you now, you can see that this policy has personal property coverage of $10,000, loss of use of $9,000, personal liability of $100,000, and medical payments to others of $1,000. It's a $250 deductible, and the premium is $98 a year, or $8.17 a month. This is just an example. We are going to give you some ways that you can hop on a link and or make a phone call or 2 and get an idea of what a policy would actually cost you in your circumstance. So to go back to some of the basics in more detail, how do deductibles work? Your deductible is the set amount of loss that you have to pay out of pocket before insurance kicks in, which I had just said. And again, you'll ask for a higher deductible if you want to pay less for the insurance, but you still want to cover if you have a big loss. So there, we've hit on that point twice. Coverage C is for contents or personal property. And that is usually the number that people pay the most attention to, because that is the most amount of coverage you'll have available to recover if you have a loss. And we recommend that everyone consider insuring their contents to replacement value. So in other words, not a garage sale value, but how much it would actually cost if you lost everything for you to go to the store and replace the same quality and type of belongings today. And obviously there is inflation and spikes in costs. So replacement value is a good bit higher than what you might imagine it would cost you to replace all of your belongings. And just be aware that there is something called sublimits within the policy, and this would be listed on your policy language, probably maybe on the second or third page, or maybe even deeper in. And these are little policy limits that live inside of your policy. And because some of these things are more inclined to be stolen or are just harder to verify, or because perhaps the insurer feels that you should buy an additional amount of insurance to cover these more valuable items, they put limits on how much you can recover for each of these categories. An example would be money. You are limited if you have, $5,000 under your mattress and it burns or gets stolen. The most your insurance would pay in this particular policy for that loss of cash would be $200. There are similar limits on things like jewelry, watches, for if it's a theft. If it's a fire, there may be a different limit. So it can be a little complicated, and you have to look in and ask questions of your agent and ask them to show you what those sublimits are. And we're going to give you a list of questions that you can ask your agent to help make sure you cover all these important points. Firearms, business personal property. With people working at home now, sometimes that people find they don't have enough coverage here. So these are things to consider adding a little extra coverage on your policy. One of the things we find ourselves saying over and over again to people who are looking at insuring their belongings and having a safety net should a disaster hit is to make sure that you document the details. The proof of your belongings is what you will use to access your claim dollars from your insurance company. So the insurance company will not simply write you a check for the total amount you have insurance you have if you have a loss. Rather, they will require you, and it's in the policy of the contract, that you have to document what you lost, what its condition is, how old it is, that type of thing. So when you're in a stressful situation and you've had a loss and you're out of your living space and trying to recover your insurance money, it is extremely helpful to have pictures and video or even a documented spreadsheet of your most valuable items. So we recommend that you walk through your home and open the closet doors and open the drawers and look at the serial numbers of things like a valuable bike or a computer or a musical instrument, and take lots of photos. If you can, take a smartphone or tablet video as you go through the home and talk about the things that are of value to you, and then take that documentation and store it in a safe place. We recommend that you try to keep it send it in email form, either to cloud storage if you have it, or send it to family members or keep it on a flash drive outside of your home. So you might want to keep, send an email of that information to trusted friends or family or yourself that you can find later. And then take a flash drive and print it off, copy it off onto that flash drive, and give that flash drive to a trusted family member or friend. If you need help recording, taking pictures, ask a family friend or a member of your family to come and help you do that. We have some great help on this. You'll see on a lot of these slides, we have an arrow either at the top or the bottom that gives a link. And again, you're going to get a copy of this. So you'll be able to look at this and go online. And this is an example spreadsheet of a common household and the items that would be insured within it. The next important portion of your rental insurance basic coverage that I mentioned a couple of times, and here comes the third time, so you'll remember, is coverage D. And this is called temporary living or loss of use or additional living expense. It just depends on the company. Different companies call it different things. And homeowners policies also have this type of coverage. But in rental insurance, it's more limited because you don't own the building. So they tend to not cover you living somewhere else for as long, because if, let's say you're renting a mobile home and that mobile home is destroyed by wind and you have to move out, then you are not going to be responsible for rent other than generally through the end of that particular month if it's not inhabitable. So the temporary living usually only covers a period of 2 weeks in Colorado, but you want to ask about that and know what you're going to have to work with. Sometimes the company, again, will do a dollar limit. Sometimes they'll do a time limit, and there is no dollar limit, but your dollar limit would be the actual loss sustained of you living in a space of equal size and quality to the space you were renting. So if you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, you should be able to live in another 1-bedroom apartment for that time period, regardless of the cost or up to the cost limit in the policy. And I did mention this before, but even if the property is not destroyed or unlivable, if a civil authority requires you to evacuate, so on these fires, a lot of times people will have to evacuate when the fire is threatening, and hopefully the fire gets dealt with and doesn't actually burn that community. But meanwhile, people have had to leave their home and live somewhere else, often without any belongings. So you may have to buy new prescriptions or eyeglasses or basic needs that you can't do without. These policies generally provide the ability for you to live somewhere if it is a ordered evacuation, mandatory evacuation for up to 2 weeks. So that's a really valuable benefit of having renter's insurance as well. You can quickly pay yourself back for 10 years of premiums with just one evacuation. So this next slide, we're going to get more into how you go about actually buying renter's insurance or shopping for renter's insurance. You can purchase rental insurance online from an agent, or you can call an agent or visit an agent to get rental insurance. All the major insurance carriers, both the online ones and the standard ones that come to mind, offer renter's insurance. Be sure to get a quote from at least a few good companies. We recommend 3 quotes. And you're going to want to tell them what you're looking for. And I'm going to help you with that before we're done too. One of the things you're going to need to do is figure out how much insurance do you really need or want. And again, we are going to suggest you consider what it would cost for you to replace your belongings and what you would need should you lose everything. And then you balance that with the cost of the insurance itself and your budget. And we also encourage everyone to think about their local risks. If you live in a wildfire-prone area like the foothills of Boulder, then you're going to want to really consider having wildfire insurance coverage, regular rentals, which is built into standard rental insurance. If you live in California, earthquake insurance becomes much more important, but we do have earthquakes in Colorado. They just thus far have rarely presented catastrophic damage. This is an excellent document, a PDF that we have on our website that we can also make available to you. It's Renters Insurance Tips for Coloradoans. And we will share that with you and make sure you can get that. It's going to have all this good information and then some in it as well. Okay, so there are some tools to help you shop around for renters insurance and to get the best price. And the way you would do this, we have a link here at the top. We have a Colorado specific document, again, another one that lists tips for insuring your home. We suggest you compare apples to apples. So if you're looking at a State Farm policy that's a $25,000 premium and gives you 2 weeks, or a $25,000, I'm sorry, personal property coverage and a $100 premium, and it gives you 2 weeks of additional living expense. Then if you look at Allstate or AAA or USAA or American Family or any of the other major insurers, you want to look at the same amount of insurance with the same benefits as you compare. We also strongly suggest that you ask about discounts. There are discounts available for memberships like Costco, AAA, Sam's Club, AARP. You may have discounts available if you're in the military, if you are a teacher through your professional associations and that type of thing. There are also multi-line discounts, which I will talk about a little bit more too. And you're going to want to maybe consider taking a close look at your credit score as well, because believe it or not, your premiums you pay for your car insurance and for property insurance can be impacted by your credit score. If your credit score is particularly low, it could cost you in your insurance, because they do look at that and consider that. And again, the higher the deductible, the higher you come out of your pocket with first, the first money out of your pocket, $500 versus $250, the lower the premium will be. So what matters when you're shopping is that you know what deductibles you're going to pay first, that you know your temporary living coverage, that you are certain that you're getting replacement cost coverage and not just cash value, which would be used garage sale type value, which is not very helpful when you're in a stressful situation and you really need things right away. You want to schedule any particularly valuable things that wouldn't be covered by the standard policy limits, such as jewelry, guns, business property. We talked about that. And you want to know and understand what is excluded. We talked about earthquake, flood, certain types of mold and pollutants and terrorism are not covered in many policies. Online in the renter's tips, and here is a PDF also, it's embedded in that and here. We have a renter's insurance shopping guide that you can use to kind of trip your memory so that you can use this little spreadsheet to compare 3 different quotes. And I strongly suggest you do that. Again, you can jump on that link when we provide you with the PDF. There are also some good resources online from your government, Colorado Division of Insurance, Department of Insurance with DORA. They are the regulatory agency in Colorado that is responsible and regulates how insurers behave in the state of Colorado, what the regulations are, and make sure that they're following the laws of the land in Colorado. And they also are there for you as a consumer to help you learn the same kind of information we're teaching you tonight. And there are a number of wonderful resources. They have some basic videos that you can click onto on YouTube that explain how renter's insurance works and how it works should you have water damage, what might be covered and wouldn't be covered. And they have something called a premium comparison report tool. And this is a great tool because there are links within this tool to every major insurer that operates in the state of Colorado. And it will literally connect you with that, you know, whether it be Allstate, State Farm, AAA, USAA, whoever. You can click on there and it'll bring you to where you ask for a quote from that company. So that's a great tool to use. Again, this is the Colorado Division of Insurance with the Department of Regulatory Agencies. And this is just a snapshot of what their website looks like. And you can access a lot of information online, or you can call them and they will be more than happy to help you with your insurance shopping questions. So we've pretty much covered a lot, and we've covered all the basics really of standard rental insurance and how that is different from the type of insurance your landlord may have and hopefully does have on their property. The next bite we are going to take here is going to be on flood insurance, because increasingly we're finding in a world where the weather is changing and where wildfires are becoming common and they're causing damage to the watershed. We are increasingly dealing with flooding in places in Colorado that we really never considered to be at risk in the past. And obviously in recent years, we have had some serious flooding. If you've lived in Boulder for a while, you probably remember, I think it was 2013 and 2015, some very serious flooding. So many people say flood insurance in the mountains. Yes, flood insurance in the mountains. We have a document here where you can read more about that if you choose to, with a link. And I've seen some amazing things. This is a picture from Manitou Springs. Following the Waldo Canyon fire in the coming years after that, we had considerable flooding in a place that really didn't experience it much in the past. So why flood insurance if you're renting? I mean, you don't have a home that you're responsible to replace. So why would you consider flood insurance? Well, you would consider flood insurance for the same reason that you might consider rental insurance. Because rental insurance doesn't cover if your things are damaged by flood. You have to buy a specific policy. And that policy isn't generally, it may be available through the standard insurance company you're using for your renter's insurance. Some of the insurers do provide it, but oftentimes they're just offering the National Flood Insurance Program policy. And I'm going to teach you about that shortly. One of the things I want to be sure to communicate, because it can be very kind of confusing, like government can be. And that is that flood insurance covers losses directly caused by flooding. And flooding has a very specific description when it comes to flood insurance. So it's not just water damaging your things. Flooding is technically an excess of water on land that is normally dry, affecting 2 or more acres or 2 or more properties, and sometimes known as rising water. And you will remember I mentioned when we were talking about renter's insurance, the difference between rising water and falling water. So flood insurance covers damage from rising water. So if water were to, if there were to be excessive rain and it were to overflow the storm drainage system and the stream that might be near your house, or a lake that might be near your house, and that water, rising water, were to cover 2 or more acres or 2 or more properties and destroy your property, and you had flood insurance, then that would in fact be a covered peril. So there are specific definitions around that, and it will not cover all things to do with water damage. And I'll help you understand that a bit as we go through these next couple of slides. So Renter's Flood Insurance 101, we have a link here you will see to floodsmart.gov, and you literally can just go to floodsmart.gov and access all of the information on the National Flood Insurance Program, which is a government subsidized flood insurance program that's available to everyone. And you can get a quote online. You can go through an agent to get a quote. And excuse me. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because it's really, the government enacted this program through legislation to make sure that there would be some protection available for people, even if the insurers, the standard insurers, didn't want to provide coverage in riskier areas. And so now this is available to everyone. It is lower in cost significantly than if you had to buy generally private flood insurance, which can be hard to come by and expensive. But we are right in the middle of a change in how they're rating and charging. So you just have to hop on there and get a quote to understand what it would cost. In those floods between 2014 and 2018, 40% or more of the claims that were made were outside of high-risk areas. So they were people that still had flood insurance, but it was outside of high-risk areas. You can cover up to $100,000 in contents with a flood contents policy. That is what a renter would do, is get a flood contents policy. And that would be separate again from your landlord's flood insurance policy, just like in the rental insurance world. And again, it would be good to ask your landlord to see if they have coverage for the building structure you're renting, if you are concerned about flooding. So what is covered if you buy a flood insurance policy for your rental belongings? And you would have, depending on the policy you took out, you could get up to $100,000 in contents coverage. The policy started about $100 a year, and it would be the things that you would take with you if you moved. Again, your furniture, clothes, television, computers, rugs, curtains, microwave, artwork, that type of thing. Again, there's a sublimit on certain things like original art and furs. The most they'll pay for that currently is up to $2,500. What isn't covered, excuse me, if a flood were to take your belongings, flood insurance does not provide temporary housing. However, if your building was not inhabitable, your renter's insurance may well cover that 2 weeks that it would normally cover if there is an order where you are not able to live in the house. So that is one area that kind of is a little bit, lives kind of in between the rental and the flood insurance. Financial losses like COVID business interruptions are not covered by flood insurance. Currency is not covered by flood insurance. Cars and most self-propelled vehicles and their parts are not covered by flood insurance. And this is very, very important to understand. Personal property kept below grade. So if you live in a basement or garden level apartment and all of your property is below ground level, then this renter's flood insurance will not serve you. You would still want to get regular renter's insurance for theft, fire, and that type of thing. But flood insurance, your belongings would not be covered if you live in a, or store them in a below grade space. So as you're shopping for all these different types of insurance, we want you to take notes, keep those notes, send them by email to yourself and to the agent to document what they told you. Communicate your goals and follow up if you have any questions. It's on the policyholder, the one that buys the insurance, is legally responsible to for understanding the amount of insurance they're buying and making sure it's an adequate amount of coverage. So if you don't feel you're getting a full or fair answer, ask again. And verbal promises, anything your agent would say in words, is not necessarily going to be very useful down the line. It's better to get it in writing. And that's why we suggest whatever your agent says to you in words, excuse me, that you buy the policy from, take notes and send them an email or write them a letter and keep it that says, "Dear agent, this is my understanding of what you told me. Please let me know if I am getting this wrong." And that way you have documentation of what they represented, you understood. So this is just a slide of some of the questions that you can ask your insurance agent when you're shopping. And we have a whole list of questions in the documents that we're offering you in the links. But again, what kind of perils are you covered for or not? How long are you covered if you can't live in your space? Do you have replacement costs, like new cost coverage? What is your out-of-pocket deductible before they start to pay? And what kind of discounts might you qualify for? If you're a senior, if you have auto insurance already with AAA, is there a discount for you for both of those types of insurance if you add rental insurance? And you can ask about any specific areas of concern you might have. Every year is a new policy year. So if you buy renter's insurance and it starts maybe June 1st, the next June 1st, you are what we call renewing your coverage. And it starts a new policy, which may have some different terms and different costs associated with it. And it's a perfect opportunity each year for you to consider what kind of coverage you have and talk to your agent. So we suggest you do that. If you move, you must notify your insurance company so that they have the right information and you can stay covered. If you have someone else move into your home and you maybe you have an aging parent or a sibling or someone come live with you, you want to notify your insurer so that their belongings will be covered also. If you work from home now, if you have are thinking about doing an Airbnb with a house you're renting, and you know, sharing that rent, those are things that are important and can affect whether or not you have a valid claim. So you have to share that with your insurance company. If you get married, separated, or divorced, if you have children, if you get a new pet, you want to make sure that you have full coverage. Excuse me, in Colorado, and with some insurance companies, there are certain breeds that they will not cover. And that is kind of a moving target right now. So again, you're going to want to check with the company that you're working with and see if they cover your breed of dog. And make sure you're aware one way or the other. You know, costs of everything are going up right now, and insurance is usually not at the top of the list of fun things to pay for, but it is extremely valuable when you need it. So what we try and hope to help people do is figure out how to get the insurance that they really need, not pay for more than they need, and pay as little for what they need while still getting the quality coverage and service that they're looking for. So we have some buying tips, and we have all of these different PDFs and links that we're going to share with you that will help you do that. But just to go over it, again, remember there are different deductibles you can choose from that will affect your premium. And you can, those multi-line discounts, club memberships, that type of thing, cleaning up your credit score. And there's another report that insurance companies use to determine how they're going to rate or how much money in premiums they're going to charge you based on where you live and who you are. And all of that information, they gather the data and they factor that into your rates. That information should be available to you so that you can review it and make sure it's accurate. And it's called a CLUE report, C-L-U-E. I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but you are entitled to a free copy each year. And then you can ask that if there are any errors, they be corrected. And we have a link here and a phone number where you can access that. So if you think you're getting charged high rates and you want to make sure that you're getting the lowest rate you can possibly qualify for, you're going to want to look at your credit report and your CLUE report and make sure that everything on there is accurate and is going to serve you. I actually had a situation where I had hail damage to my car, and the way the insurance company reported that was as a collision. And that if you have a certain number of claims, even if they're small claims, that can make the insurer think that you're riskier and charge you a higher rate. So I had to go in and say, wait a minute, it wasn't a collision, it was a natural weather event that shouldn't be charged against me. And they fixed it, and it now I know my report is correct. I'm getting the lowest rate that I should get. And another thing you want to be sure to do, especially with auto insurance, is to touch base with your insurer and make sure that they're charging you for the correct miles driven. A lot of people are driving less now. And a lot of times, once you've had the car a certain number of years, the value of having collision coverage goes down to you. as the value of the car goes down. So it may not be worth your while to keep collision coverage on an older car, because if you totaled that car, the amount you would recover would not be that much. Where it is absolutely essential that you keep liability coverage and uninsured motorist coverage and certain coverages that are required by law. So you don't want to drop your insurance on your automobile, but you may want to change it to save premium dollars that you could perhaps use for your rental insurance. And you also might want to ask for any discounts or rebates that the insurance company is giving people for the last couple of years, where COVID has caused rates to go down because less people were on the roads. Even if you were driving the same amount, you may have up to a 25% discount on your rates from your auto insurance last year. You can call your agent and ask about that. I actually did get a rebate on my auto insurance. And think before you file a claim. If you have a fender bender and it's just a little ding, we recommend that you bring it in and you find out what it's going to cost you to repair it. If it's going to cost you $450 to repair and you have a $500 deductible, then that's not something you're going to want to report necessarily to your insurance company, because you're not going to get any claim dollars. You'll have to pay for it all out of pocket anyway. However, if ever anyone is hurt in an automobile accident, then it's very important that you report that and that you report it right away. If you have a claim, just know that we have amazing resources to help you understand how to stand up for yourself and your rights with your insurance company, and how to do your due diligence and responsibilities when you file that claim. You can start a diary, save all your receipts, take lots of pictures, and make sure you're looking at a certified copy of the policy so you know what your benefits are. We have lots of online resources, like I said. It's www.uphelp.org. My email is kerri@uphelp.org. And if you have any questions or you just want to chat with me by email, feel free, and I will connect you with the information we've talked about. That's kerri@uphelp.org. We have the insurance buying tips link here. We have a great little video where Mario Lopez online, the YouTube video you can click on at this link, talks about rental insurance and the importance of having rental insurance. And we have many, many other wonderful resources online for you. As a part of this grant that we were fortunate enough to be able to work with the Community Foundation of Boulder to present this to you, we are offering this same series 2 more times. And you can see that here. It's October 18th and October 21st. So if you want, pass it on and tell someone else about it. They can hop in and we can keep going and teach them the same information. So that covers it pretty much. And we want to once again thank the Community Foundation of Boulder County. We're really, I'm personally feel really grateful to have the opportunity to help people be prepared. So when these difficult times come, whether it's fire, flood, hail, or whatever, we are able to be a resilient community and all work together to rebuild and to keep on keeping on. So thank you for spending the time with us tonight, and have a great evening.